If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or cast aside by the people who were supposed to love you most, then this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and settle in because the revenge I served wasn't just cold, it was couture. My name is Lumina. My father named me that, he said, because even as a baby, I had a spark in my eyes that lit up the room. He told me I was woven from light. Ridiculous? Maybe. But that's who he was. Soft when no one was looking, poetic in a way that clashed with his cold, calculating boardroom persona. He was the founder of House Lyrian, one of the oldest couture brands in Europe, and my whole world growing up. Some little girls grow up playing princess. I grew up sewing their dresses. My earliest memory isn't of toys or lullabies, it's of textiles. I was 5, maybe 6, when I first slipped into the design room. Everyone was so busy shouting, pinning, running. But I remember finding a scrap of deep violet silk on the floor and folding it like a flower, purely by instinct. I tucked it into a discarded bodice and walked away. A week later, I saw that flower, my flower, on a model's dress in Milan. That was my first taste of creation. And I never looked back. By age 12, I was sketching shadow collections in the margins of my schoolbooks. By 14, I had learned how to speak without words, through stitch and shade. And by 16, my father started bringing me to internal reviews, letting me speak in front of design, leads twice my age. He told everyone, Lumina doesn't just design clothes. She tells stories. And while the room smiled politely, not all those smiles were kind. Least of all, Julian's. My brother, Julian, was older by 3 years, and from the outside, he was everything you'd want in a fashion heir. Devastatingly handsome, impeccably dressed, charismatic to the point of manipulation. The media loved him. Clients adored him. But my father didn't trust him. Not really. Oh, he tried. He gave Julian chances, made him head of marketing, let him oversee business strategy. But Julian didn't want to build. He wanted to own. And he hated that the one thing he couldn't fake was talent. Julian used to laugh and say, You're the artist, Lumi, and I'm the empire. One of us needs to care about profit. I'd smile, but deep down I knew what he meant. He was warning me. Art had a place, but only under his thumb. Still, back then, I believed we were just different. That we could balance each other. It never occurred to me that he might see me as competition. Then there was her, our mother Celeste. If my father was warm, mother was ice. Regal, poised, always watching. She was beautiful in that unnerving way, like a porcelain doll that might crack if you smiled too wide. She'd been a model in the 80s, rising fast through Europe's fashion elite before marrying into the Lyrian family and trading cameras for control. She never outright discouraged me, but she didn't hide her bias either. Men lead. Women inspire, she'd once told me when I was 16. As if I were just meant to decorate the throne my brother would sit on. Still, for a while, none of that mattered.
Because he believed in me.
My father. When he was alive, I never had to doubt my worth. We'd spend hours debating design theory, fabric choice, silhouette structure. He taught me how to argue in elegance, how to defend my vision with grace. He gave me his old leather sketchbook when I turned 18 and wrote in the cover, You're not just my daughter. You're the future I always dreamed of. I didn't know then how much that would enrage Julian. By the time I turned 23, I had my first full collection under my name. And it was a triumph. 27 pieces inspired by natural light, silvers, soft golds, shimmering whites that moved like water under spotlights. Vogue called it ethereal. Elle said I was a ghost of haute couture's golden age returned to haunt us with beauty. Even Julian had to smile when the photos hit international spreads. But that smile never reached his eyes. We were supposed to present the next joint collection together, his business vision, my designs. That's when the shift began. First, it was minor. Fabrics arriving late. Seamstresses claiming they hadn't received my sketches. Emails, missing attachments. Then one day, I came into the studio to find an intern crying. She'd been told to delete my files. No one said it directly, she whispered, but they said you were unstable, that you needed rest. that the collection was going in a new direction. A direction that Julian had chosen. My sketches, my themes, reinterpreted by his creative team. I confronted him, furious, shaking. "You're hijacking my work." Julian didn't deny it. He just tilted his head and said, "You work too hard, Lumi. Maybe it's time you step back. Let the real players take it from here." It was the first time I truly saw him, not as my brother, but as a predator in designer shoes. Still, I wasn't ready to believe Mother was involved. That is, until I overheard her in the conservatory, whispering into her phone when she thought I was out.
Yes.
The will hasn't changed yet, but it will. Once Emile sees she's not ready, he'll make the right decision. Julian's the future. Lumina's too soft. I stood in the hall for a full 10 minutes before my knees could hold me again. She hadn't just chosen him. She decided I didn't belong. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just went back to the studio, sat in the dark, and began to design something new. Not a dress. Not a collection. A plan. Most people think betrayal feels like a knife in the back. It doesn't. It feels like fabric slipping through your fingers one thread at a time. You don't even realize the garment is falling apart until it's too late. That's how I felt in the days after I heard my mother's voice say the words that unstitched me. Julian's the future. Lumina's too soft. The problem was she wasn't wrong. I had been soft. Believing the good in people. Believing that if I worked hard and stayed true to myself, talent would win.
But now?
Now I saw things clearly. And clarity is sharp. I didn't confront her. I didn't slam any doors or shout at Julian across a marble hallway. That's what they expected. Instead, I smiled. I played along. I thanked them for taking the pressure off. I pretended to be overwhelmed, grateful for the break. Julian laughed and patted my shoulder like I was some emotional little sister who didn't understand how business worked. And while he played king, I started sewing something invisible, a net. I began with the financials. My father had always shown me parts of the business, but there were files I'd never been allowed to see. Corporate records, private investments, board reports. Julian and Mother kept those locked away behind layers of digital security and offshore lawyers. But I had something they didn't know I had: access to our old studio archive servers. The same servers Mother insisted were obsolete and disconnected. Except they weren't. They still had legacy backups of everything: emails, design drafts, legal memos, even scans of signed contracts. And buried deep inside a folder labeled archive_14C was a spreadsheet with the same title over and over.
Operative Phoenix, Initiative Rebuild.
That was the first time I saw the name. The Phoenix. At first, I thought it was a code name for Julian's rebranding campaign. Some ridiculous metaphor about rising from my supposed failure. But then I found an email chain. From Phoenix@Corvus.net to Julian.Lyrian@Lyrian.co. Subject: Phase 2 Timeline. Ensure Lumina is kept off public platforms. Discredit her through emotional instability narrative. Secure father's legal redirection of control before Q4. We'll clean the rest behind the curtain. Julian responded with one word: understood. My hands went cold. This wasn't just sibling rivalry. This wasn't just a mother's favoritism. This was a coordinated character assassination with legal, financial, and reputational components, and someone else pulling the strings. Who was the Phoenix? Someone outside the family? An investor? A disgraced former employee?
I didn't know yet.
But one thing was clear. I was up against more than just ego. I was up against warfare. The very next day, Julian hosted a gala in Monaco, one of our seasonal brand showcases, now rebranded House Lyrian Forward. I wasn't invited, but I showed up anyway. Wearing a dress I'd designed 3 years earlier that had never been approved for production, deep obsidian velvet, draped with metallic thread like veins of gold running down the arms. It was dramatic. It was controversial. It was unmistakably me. And it turned heads the moment I entered the ballroom. Julian's smile faltered for half a second. But I wasn't there to reclaim attention. I was there to watch him sweat. The collection he presented that night? It was mine. Twisted, hollowed, dressed up in cold geometry and meaningless trend jargon. My designs had been stolen, watered down, rebranded as visionary. But what no one knew, what he didn't know, was that I had secretly trademarked the original sketches months earlier under an LLC registered in Belgium. I had been planning something of my own, a collection that would be revolutionary, not just in fashion but in function. And I had waited,
And watched.
and documented every stolen idea. Back in Paris, I started building my case. I printed copies of internal emails, recorded voice memos, interviewed loyal staff members who had been quietly forced out by structural reorganization. And slowly, I began assembling a mosaic of betrayal. At the center of it all was the Phoenix. Their fingerprints were everywhere: timelines, strategy memos, investor calls I hadn't known existed. Whoever they weren't working for Julian. Julian was working for them. That realization chilled me, because it meant this wasn't just about me being pushed out. It meant I was never the true target. My father was. The man who built House Lyrian from a two-room atelier into a fashion empire had always been cautious. But age had worn him down. He'd recently suffered a minor stroke, nothing that physically incapacitated him, but enough to make him retreat from daily operations. Enough to make him vulnerable. Julian and Mother were using that vulnerability to edge him out. Slowly, quietly, with legal adjustments and PR spin. And the Phoenix? They were pulling the strings behind both of them, probably for years.
I needed an ally.
Someone who still had access, someone they hadn't corrupted. So I called Henrik Malin, my father's oldest friend and former CFO of the brand. Henrik had retired 2 years ago. Rumors swirled about creative disagreements, but I'd always suspected it was more. He met me in a tiny cafe just off Montmartre. Wore his usual three-piece tweed. Same silver pocket watch he always carried when I was a child. I slid him the envelope across the table. Bank transfers. Shell corporations. Phoenix emails. He looked at each page in silence. Then finally said, "I knew they were snakes. But this is venom." Henrik agreed to help.
Quietly.
He gave me backdoor access to internal stakeholder records. Helped me draft a preliminary report to the board. Taught me how to encrypt everything I found. But most importantly, he warned me, don't underestimate Celeste. She's not just complicit. She's groomed Julian for this. That night, I went home and stared at my design wall. Sketches of dresses made to shimmer like dawn. Suits that adjusted fabric temperature for the wearer. Adaptive fibers I'd spent 2 years developing in partnership with a silent biotech partner. They weren't just clothes. They were the future. And Julian wanted to launch them without me. I couldn't let that happen. But I also couldn't just release them on my own. If I moved too soon, they'd discredit me, smear my name, and bury the story.
No.
I needed the perfect moment. A single, unforgettable night, where the world would see who I really was and who they really were. And for that, I needed to step out of the shadows. One stitch at a time. There's a sound I'll never forget. Fabric tearing under tension. It's subtle at first, almost like a whisper. But once it starts, you know it can't be undone. That was the sound in my head as I sat across from my father for the first time in weeks, watching him stir tea. He wouldn't drink, eyes clouded. Not with confusion, but with exhaustion. We were in his private study, a room that used to feel like a sanctuary. Now it felt like a tomb. He didn't look at me when he spoke. "You've been busy, Lumina." My heart sank. "Father, don't lie to me." That stopped me. Not because of the tone, it wasn't angry. It was disappointed, afraid, like he wanted to believe in me, but someone had already poisoned that well. And I knew exactly who. I placed the folder on the table between us. Printed emails, transaction summaries, a list of shell companies, all run by Julian, with Celeste's silent approval. A side-by-side comparison of my original designs and the ones being launched under Julian's name. My father didn't touch it at first. Then, slowly, he opened the folder. Page after page. His hand trembled once, but he didn't say a word until the end. When he looked up, His eyes weren't cloudy anymore. They were burning. This is treason. It's theft, I whispered. Of your company. Your legacy. He was quiet again. And your mother? Complicit. And this? Phoenix. Still hidden. He closed the folder, exhaled through his nose. Then said the one thing I wasn't expecting. Then we don't move yet. I blinked.
What?
We have evidence. And if we go public now, it'll be a scandal. Investors will panic. Shares will plummet. You'll be framed as a bitter daughter with a grudge, and I'll be dismissed as a senile old man clinging to a sinking throne. He stood, straighter than I'd seen him in months. No, Lumina. We do this smart.
Cold.
Surgical. I stared at him. So, you believe me? He didn't smile.
Didn't touch me.
But he looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're your mother's daughter when it comes to strategy. But you're mine when it comes to truth." That's all I needed to see. That night, I realized I wasn't alone. Not completely. But I also understood the stakes were higher than ever. If Julian or Mother found out that Father was back in the game, even just mentally, they'd move faster. Force his hand legally. Have him declared unfit. And if the Phoenix was as dangerous as I suspected, they'd do worse. Time was running out. That's when I launched Project Eclipse. On paper, it was a boutique luxury label founded by a reclusive Scandinavian designer. In reality, it was me, under an alias, funded by Henrik's silent investors and a few former allies in textile tech. Overnight, Eclipse dropped a teaser video. Dark silhouettes of walking figures in adaptive fabric. Iridescent shadows. No name. No face. Just one line of text. The future has a name. You'll know it soon. It went viral.
Hedge.
TikTok. Fashion Twitter. Everyone started guessing. But Julian? He knew. 2 days later, I received an anonymous text on my burner phone. "You're playing with fire." And fire remembers.
P.
I stared at the screen for a long time. Not just because it was the first direct contact from the Phoenix, but because the number had once belonged to Arya.
Arya.
My older sister. Dead for nearly a decade. Drowned in a boating accident off the coast of St. Raphael. No body recovered. No memorial service. Just a closed casket. A few family tears. And then silence. I hadn't spoken her name in years. Neither had anyone else. But now it was clawing back to the surface. What if she wasn't dead? What if the Phoenix was someone I once loved? Someone I once lost? I spent the next 48 hours tearing through old files, media reports, archived social posts, private journals. Clue by clue, a pattern started to emerge. A rise in aggressive strategic moves against House Lyrian began 6 months after Arya's death. Several Phoenix shell companies were based out of the same small city in Croatia, where Arya once studied textile chemistry abroad. One video clip showed a woman stepping out of a limo at a tech gala in Berlin. Her face was blurred. Her walk was not. It was Arya's walk. Deliberate. Left shoulder always slightly ahead. Grace like a blade. If the Phoenix really was Arya, then this wasn't just about business. This was personal. A second betrayal. Or a second coming. Either way, the rules had changed. So I began preparing for war. I moved my real sketches to offsite vaults. Encrypted every file. Deleted social media. Cut contact with anyone I couldn't fully trust. I poured every ounce of rage, grief, brilliance, and heartbreak into my final collection, the Ascension line. It would feature 29 pieces, each one representing a year of my life. The final piece? A dress made from experimental fabric, coated to react to body heat and spotlight intensity. It would shimmer in patterns only visible to the naked eye. Hidden words stitched into the folds. Truth rises. This wasn't just fashion. It was confession. And confrontation. And when the time came, it would be their reckoning. All of them. Julian. Mother. And Arya if she truly was the Phoenix. You'd think, after discovering your brother and mother are conspiring to erase you, and learning that your supposedly dead sister might be the puppet master, You'd have no more illusions left. But betrayal isn't a one-time thing. It's layered, like velvet, soft on the surface.
Heating rot beniat.
And this next layer? Cut deeper than all the rest. For a few days after the Eclipse teaser dropped, the silence was almost deafening. Julian didn't text. Mother didn't call. But I knew they were watching. I could feel it in the sudden spike of fake accounts trying to follow my private pages, in the emails requesting interviews under fake media credentials, and in the board's sudden movement. Just a week after the viral Eclipse drop, House Larion's internal stakeholders announced a closed session review of brand direction and senior leadership succession. Translation: Julian was making his move to take full control. Father had been quiet since our last meeting. I wasn't sure if he was protecting me or retreating into silence again. But then Henrik messaged me. They've initiated the legal transition. Julian is pushing a revised version of the will. Your name's missing. I didn't cry. Not this time. I'd already mourned the version of my family I thought I had. But something about that message, that final erasure, awoke something dangerous inside me. I wasn't angry. I was surgical. The next day, I scheduled a private appointment at House Larion's showroom. Used a pseudonym. Booked under the name Marian Ash. Julian's assistant didn't recognize me at first. New girl. Probably hired to replace someone more competent. She smiled at me and offered champagne. I smiled back and handed her a USB drive with a single file titled Liability Exhibit A, Confidential. Then I walked straight into Julian's office. He looked up, startled. Wearing one of my designs, repurposed into a men's blazer, if you can believe it. Lumi, he said, standing slowly. Didn't expect to see you here. I closed the door behind me. I'm not here for pleasantries.
He laughed.
That same patronizing chuckle that made my skin crawl. Still dramatic, I see. Honestly, I thought you'd be off somewhere sketching fantasies. I'm not here to talk about art, I said coldly. I'm here to talk about theft.
Fraud.
And your attempt to bury me. His smile froze. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? I leaned forward, dropping the second USB on his desk. Everything I need is in there. Shell accounts. Proof you plagiarized my tech fabrics. Evidence of you manipulating investor presentations. You hacked me?
No.
You're just stupid. He reached for his phone, probably to call security. I stopped him. You do that, and this goes to the press. Vogue. Forbes. Interpol if I feel generous. Julian swallowed. His bravado was cracking. What do you want? He said finally. A seat at the table. Access to my line. And you tell the board the Eclipse launch was your idea to support me. Not yourself. Publicly. You're insane. I stepped closer. You're cornered. He said nothing, but I saw it in his eyes. He knew I wasn't bluffing. That night, House Larion issued a vague press release stating that internal family dynamics have shifted in support of collaborative innovation and that a historic partnership between rising designers and legacy visionaries would headline the final quarter. Translation: Julian had given in for now. The public didn't know it yet, but I was officially back in. What they also didn't know was that I still had no idea who the Phoenix truly was. Until I got the package. It was a flat box wrapped in matte black tissue. No return address. Inside, a single garment tag, burnt slightly at the edges. And on the back, stitched in blood-red thread, L20A. You left me in the fire. My heart dropped. I hadn't seen that code in over a decade. L20A wasn't a dress. It was a person.
Aria.
The L line had been my father's secret nickname for us. Lumina was L20, the Aria was L20A. We found the label once in an old vault when we were teenagers. He used to call us his Project L girls, like we were special prototypes. Back then, it had made us laugh. Now it felt like a death sentence. Aria had sent the message. Not as a warning, as a statement.
I'm alive.
And I remember everything. Henrik confirmed the tag's origin. That's original House Larion threading. From the late 90s. No one outside the family would know how to replicate it. which meant one thing. The Phoenix wasn't just manipulating Julian. She was preparing to destroy us all, one by one. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Not because I was afraid, but because I couldn't stop remembering. The last day I saw Arya alive. She was 19. I was 14. Mother had slapped her in front of us after an argument, something about refusing a prearranged interview.
I remember the sound. Sharp.
Final. Arya ran out of the room. She left that night. And 3 weeks later, we got the call. A storm. A boat.
No survivors.
Except, there was never a body. Just a ring. Hers. Found washed ashore. I stared at that label for hours, turning it over, studying the stitches. They weren't angry. They were surgical. Precise. That was the scariest part. Arya wasn't unhinged. She was focused. And she had a plan. Which meant I needed one too. Because if she was behind all of this, pulling strings, orchestrating my fall, controlling Julian, then she wasn't just back. She was better than ever.
Smarter.
More patient. And she didn't want revenge. She wanted to replace us. I once believed that grief had an expiration date. That after a certain number of tears, or years, or memorial services, it stopped holding you hostage. But standing there, holding a burnt garment tag from my supposedly dead sister, I realized something horrifying. I had never grieved Arya. Not properly. Because part of me had always suspected something didn't add up. And now, the shadow I thought I'd buried was rising again. With purpose. And precision. 3 days after receiving the tag, I got a text from an encrypted number. Barcelona. Thursday. 11 p.m. You'll know the place. Don't bring anyone. There was no signature. But the timestamp said everything. July 11th. Arya's birthday. I didn't tell Henrik. Didn't warn my father. I should have. But something about that message felt sacred. Like a moment from childhood echoing across time. Barcelona was where Arya and I spent one summer together while Mother was off at wellness clinics. Code for cheating on my father, I would later learn. That summer had been our only real escape. We were free. We danced in empty plazas at night, stole pastries from the kitchen when no one was looking, stitched half-formed gowns out of old curtains just for fun. It was the last time I ever saw her truly happy. Maybe the last time she saw me the same. The message didn't say where exactly to go. Just, you'll know the place. And I did.
Carrer de l'Artifici.
A dead-end alley lined with cracked brick, hidden behind a row of artisan bakeries. At the very end, an old tailor's sign hung like a memory. Rosa's Atelier. But Rosa was long gone. Replaced. By something entirely new. The iron door opened before I knocked. A woman with white gloves gestured me inside.
She didn't speak.
Just nodded toward a spiral staircase leading down into darkness. I descended slowly. Fabric walls lined the stairwell, deep red, embroidered with gold in an ancient motif I couldn't place. At the bottom, silence. And then, a room full of mannequins. Dozens. All dressed in garments that looked like they belonged in another world. Luminous, terrifying, beautiful. Armor disguised as elegance. Dresses with built-in circuitry. Coats that looked like they were carved from shadows. Every one of them had one thing in common. They looked like my work. Twisted. Weaponized. Made to intimidate. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't a collection. It was a declaration. And then I heard her voice. I wondered how long it would take you. She stepped into the light like she'd never left. Same eyes. Same walk. Same scar above her right knee. She got it falling off a horse when we were 10. But everything else had changed. Her hair was jet black now. Short, sharp. She wore no jewelry. Her posture was steel. She didn't hug me. Didn't cry. She just said, "You came. Good. That means you're still capable of listening." I couldn't speak at first. My chest was frozen. "You're alive," I finally said. She tilted her head. Clearly. "You faked your death?" She shrugged.
No.
I just didn't stop it. I felt sick. "You let us think you were gone for 10 years. Because I was gone. The girl you knew died the night Mother pushed me out of that house. We thought you drowned. She lied, Lumi. Like she always did. She sent me away to protect the brand. Told Father I was unstable. Said I needed treatment. Then arranged for me to disappear quietly. I left. I rebuilt. And I watched. Watched what?
You.
Him. All of it. I shook my head, tears threatening. You let me grieve you. Her expression didn't change. You needed to. That was when I realized. Arya didn't come back to reconnect. She came back to dismantle everything. This place, she said, gesturing to the mannequins. It's called Ashline.
My house.
Built from the ashes of Lyrian. Every piece here tells a story they tried to silence.
Meaning?
Yours. Our father's. Even Julian's. You're launching a collection? I'm launching a reckoning. With our family? No, she said, cold. With the lie they built over us. I just never expected you'd survive long enough to see it. Why not? Because Julian is ruthless. And Mother? She'd bury her own daughters to keep control. And she already did. I didn't know what was worse, her words, or how much sense they made. Why reveal yourself now? I asked. She finally hesitated. Because you forced my hand. By doing what? By fighting back. Her gaze softened slightly. I thought you were gone, Lumi. That they'd hollowed you out. But you surprised me. You stitched a war plan into a ball gown. I respect that. That was the only praise she gave me. And it was the last. Because her next words were colder than anything Julian ever said. But you need to understand something. I'm not here to share the throne. I'm here to burn it down.
You can get out now.
Or you'll get caught in the fire. I stepped back, breath shaking. You destroy everything Father built?
She didn't blink.
He let it rot. Now it ends. One way or another. He didn't know what Mother did. He chose not to know. I stared at her, heart pounding. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was scorched earth. You can stay here, Arya said. Be a queen of ashes. Or you can walk away and start something new. But you won't stop me. You're not built like that. I straightened. You don't know who I am anymore. She smirked. Maybe not. But I know who I made you. And with that, she turned and walked out, leaving me surrounded by mannequins wearing ghosts. When I got back to Paris, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just stared at my own sketches and wondered if she was right. Had I only become strong because she vanished? Was I chasing justice or just trying to survive? But then I remembered something. Arya didn't stitch my backbone. She just disappeared. I built myself.
Tvet be tvet.
Wound by wound. If she wanted a war, she'd get one. But not the one she expected. Not fire. Not ash.
Light.
In fashion, timing is everything. Too early, and you're dismissed as delusional. Too late, and you're forgotten. I didn't have time to mourn Arya's resurrection. I didn't even have time to process it. Because 3 days after our meeting in Barcelona, she went public. And when she did, it was like the sky cracked open. The first whisper came from an underground fashion blog out of Berlin. A phantom house is rising. Ashline's first show set for Venice. No investors. No press invites. Just one name on the thread. No one believed it. They thought it was a stunt. Until Ashline launched their website. Black background. White serif font.
No es plus. No nemashchen.
Just one image. A model with her back turned, wearing a dress that shimmered with embers. And beneath it, I was never gone. I was erased. Signed, Illyrian. Arya didn't just return. She unbared herself in front of the entire industry. Publications scrambled. Twitter exploded. Fashion houses panicked. And House Lyrian was dead silent. Because they couldn't explain what no one was supposed to know. They had told the world Arya was dead. Now she was throwing their lies back at them, stitched into haute couture. I sat in my studio for hours, watching it all unfold. I felt sick. Not with fear. With understanding. Arya hadn't launched a collection. She had launched a weapon. Each garment she teased in the Ashline lookbook carried subtext. One coat bore the same neckline mother once claimed was too masculine when Arya designed it at 17. One bodysuit had a hidden quote sewn into the lining. What they silence, I amplify. Each piece was a rebuke. A scream wrapped in silk.
And worse?
They were brilliant. Ashline wasn't some cheap knockoff revenge brand. It was revolutionary. Quiet technology. Weighted fabrics. AI-generated pattern mapping. She hadn't just watched us for 10 years. She'd outpaced us. Henrik called me 2 hours after the site launched. She's got 4 major houses requesting collabs already.
Dior.
Balenciaga. Even McQueen. That fast? I asked, stunned. She's got techno unseen. Backers we can't trace. And the press loves a resurrection story. And the board.
He paused.
They're panicking. Half of them are wondering if she's coming for the brand directly. She is, I said. But not like they think. And what do you think? She's not just burning the house down. She's building a better one on top of the ashes. I knew I couldn't match her theatrics. Not yet. But I didn't need to. Because I had something she didn't. The truth. And access to the people she'd left behind. The next day, I called an emergency internal meeting. I invited the executive designers, the heads of textile R&D, and 2 board members who were still loyal to my father. Then I did something Julian never expected. I showed them everything. Emails. Prototypes. Stolen fabric formulas. Legal drafts Celeste had hidden from shareholders. I laid it all out on the table, without dramatics, without spin. Just truth. And when I was done, I said, this isn't about me reclaiming a seat at the table. This is about making sure the table still exists in 6 months. Arya's back. She's faster, smarter, and decades ahead in textile engineering. But she's also burning bridges. We're not going to fight her with denial. We're going to fight her with evolution. Lyrian doesn't survive by clinging to its past. It survives by becoming the future before anyone else dares to imagine it. Silence followed. Then, slow, careful applause. From Edeline, our chief materials engineer. A woman who had been sidelined by Celeste 2 years ago after pushing for sustainable, smart fabrics. Then from Milo, the head of digital development. And finally from Father. He had arrived halfway through, sat silently in the back.
Now he stood.
I founded House Lyrian with hands blistered from scissors, he said. I watched my daughters fight their demons in silence. And I've been a coward long enough.
Then he looked at me.
If there's a legacy left in this name, let it be stitched by Lumina. For the first time in months, I felt the ground solid beneath me. But that feeling lasted exactly 1 day. Because betrayal always comes from the inside. And I should have known. The announcement went live at noon. Julian Lyrian to partner with Ashline on exclusive hybrid line. The article called it a historic reconciliation of House Lyrian's past and future. They claimed the partnership was proof that the Lyrian siblings were innovating together across houses. That Ashline and Lyrian would co-headline Fashion Week. And then, at the bottom, in small, italicized font. No official comment from Lumina Lyrian. I nearly dropped my phone. This was Arya's move. And Julian's betrayal. She hadn't just stolen the spotlight. She'd cut me out of my own house. Again. Henrik called, voice urgent. They blindsided us. Julian pushed it through with Celeste's help. Backdoor vote. You've got 72 hours before the board locks in the showcase lineup. So they're framing it as a Lyrian-Ashline alliance?
Exactly.
They're rewriting the narrative. Making it seem like you're the one refusing to participate. Where's Father? He's livid, but legally, he's still not fully reinstated as decision-maker. I hung up and stared at the press release again. Then at the photo attached. Julian standing beside a blurred figure in a red hooded dress. Not Arya's face, but her presence. Undeniable. They were framing it as peace. But it was a takeover. And I was the only one standing in its way. So I did the only thing I could. I started building my own house. One that couldn't be co-opted. One they couldn't burn. Not out of revenge. Not out of ego. but because if I didn't, everything my father built would become a myth. And everything Arya wanted would turn into law. There's a saying in couture: control the pattern, or the pattern controls you. Arya had just seized the narrative, and with it, the mythos of House Lyrian. And Julian, ever the opportunist, was now her proxy prince. For the outside world, this was a redemption arc. The prodigal sister returned. The fractured family reunited. The legacy reborn. But from the inside, it was a silent coup. And I was being erased in real time. 2 nights after the press release dropped, I sat alone in the Lyrian prototype vault, deep underground, beneath the main atelier. The walls were lined with unfinished dreams, dresses never approved, concepts shelved for being too risky, fabrics that never saw light. I found myself staring at one design in particular, the pulse dress, my earliest tech-infused prototype. It was rejected 5 years ago by the board. They said it was gimmicky. That fashion was about art, not circuitry.
But now?
Ashline's entire line was built on exactly that concept. That was when I decided. I wasn't going to fight Arya in the shadows anymore. If they wanted a war of public perception, I'd give them one. But it would be on my terms. Henrik met me that morning in a corner cafe across from the Seine. He looked rough, tie undone, eyes bloodshot, phone constantly buzzing. "You're being boxed out," he said bluntly. 3 board members just defected. They think Julian's partnership with Ashline is progressive branding. So, let's give them something else to believe in. He raised an eyebrow. "You have a plan?" "I'm creating a show. Independently. Separate from Lyrian. Not Eclipse. Not anything tied to the house." "Where?" "Venice. Aria's territory." Exactly. The plan was reckless. I had no official venue, no funding, no staff. But I had 2 things Arya didn't expect: the underground and the discarded. I called in every designer, engineer, intern, and seamstress House Lyrian had ever cast aside. The too bold. The too technical. The ones who dreamed in fiber optics and algorithms. They came like moths to flame. Because deep down, they didn't want to just make clothes. They wanted to make history. We set up in an abandoned opera house outside Venice. Crumbling, dust-laced, perfect. We gutted it. Wired it. Rebuilt the stage with programmable fabric backdrops. Installed floor sensors and temperature-reactive lighting. The line I would debut?
Codeline.
A 20-piece collection that would respond dynamically to music, audience emotion, and social media chatter in real time. No one had seen anything like it, because no one had dared. The moment the rumor leaked, Lumina Lyrian building pop-up in Venice. Arya moved fast. She released her second teaser. This time it wasn't just garments. It was her face. The video was just 13 seconds. Arya standing in a spotlight, wearing a molten red dress. Her voice, clear and chilling. Fashion remembers. Blood remembers. And I remember everything you took. Fade to black. #Ashline Awakens. The video had over 12 million views in 48 hours. That was when I realized this wasn't just about family. Arya had followers. Disciples almost. People who saw her not as a rogue designer, but as a symbol. A phoenix for everyone who'd ever been cut out, counted out, shut down. And if I didn't shift the emotional current, I'd be drowned by it. So, I leaked something of my own. Not a video. A letter. Published anonymously, the letter was titled, "From a Daughter Left Behind." It was raw, honest,
Terrifying.
It didn't name names. Didn't accuse. It simply told the story of a girl who watched her sister disappear, her mother lie, her father crumble, and her brother climb over the bones. It ended with a promise. "I won't fight with fire. I'll fight with light. You'll see me soon. And you'll see the truth in every stitch." The letter went viral. Not as fast as Arya's video, but with deeper resonance. Because for every person who wanted to watch the world burn, there were still some who believed in healing. That night, I received a voicemail from my father. He didn't say much. Just 7 words. "I'm proud of you, my golden thread." I cried for the first time in weeks. then got back to work. Because I had exactly 10 days before my pop-up show. And Ashline's spectacle was scheduled for the exact same night, in the exact same city. This wasn't coincidence. This was collision. And somewhere deep in House Lyrian, someone was feeding Arya my plans.
I didn't know who yet,
But I could feel them, moving in the dark. It was the night before the show. Venice smelled like rain and champagne, anticipation heavy in the air like perfume. I was standing center stage in the old opera house, watching the last sensors get tested, when Henrik walked in with his face white and phone in hand. "We have a problem," he said. I didn't need to ask. I could see it in his eyes. Arya had made her move. Ashline had just posted their final teaser, a single looping clip of a dress blooming open mid-runway into a phoenix's silhouette, red smoke curling from its seams. But it wasn't the dress that gutted me. It was the soundtrack. A distorted piano melody. The exact one I used to play as a child. The one Arya taught me. A melody no one outside our family ever heard. It was a message. She wasn't just reminding the world that she rose from fire. She was reminding me that she taught me how to burn. I looked at Henrik. Someone leaked the music files. Or someone stole them.
How?
I think I know who. He handed me his phone. On the screen, security footage from the studio 2 nights ago. A woman slipping into my office after midnight. Hair pulled back, face masked, gloved hands. But the posture was unmistakable. Julian's assistant. Her name was Raya. Hired 6 months ago. Smart, quiet, forgettable. Too forgettable. She hadn't been placed there to help Julian. She was Arya's. And somehow I missed it. My heart raced. Not with panic, but with clarity. "Is she still in Venice?" I asked.
Henrik nodded.
"We tracked the hotel. I can handle it." "No," I said, standing. "I will." It was midnight when I found Raya. She was outside a wine bar near the canals, alone, scrolling her phone. I didn't confront her like a boss. I sat beside her like an equal. Quiet. Measured. She didn't flinch.
Didn't even look at me.
"You're smarter than this," I said softly. Still no response. "You think Arya will protect you? She doesn't do protection. She does usefulness." Finally, she looked up. "She gave me purpose." "She gave you orders." "That's not purpose." "She gave me a voice." "Then use it." A beat. Then she stood, tossed her phone into the canal, and walked away without another word. I'd never see her again. But she'd already done the damage. Backstage the next day, the air was thick with adrenaline. The pop-up venue was full, standing room only. Vogue was there.
So was Business of Fashion.
Even 2 board members from House Lyrian showed up, though they didn't dare say hello. The moment the lights dimmed, everything disappeared. Just breath. And motion.
And sound.
My opening model walked out in silence. Then the music started. But not the stolen piano track. This one was new. Composed overnight. Built entirely from the sound of scissors, thread pulls, and heartbeat pulses. And as each model walked, the garments changed color, based on audience temperature and applause decibel levels. Garments that read the crowd. And responded. The finale? A gown I designed at 16. Reworked. Reborn. It shimmered in cascading waves of light, revealing embedded patterns of every past Lyrian silhouette, stitched in reverse order, tracing the family line back to the origin. Not to erase the legacy, but to reclaim it. The crowd didn't cheer. They stood. Stunned.
Moved.
And in that second, I didn't care what Arya was showing across town. Because this was no longer a competition. It was a resurrection.
Meaning.
But just as I stepped backstage, Henrik met me with a grim look. "We have a problem. Again." Arya's show just ended. And she closed it in person. So, she closed it wearing the original L20 prototype. The one from your father's vault. The dress that never debuted. "That's impossible," I said. "That piece was destroyed in the vault fire." And then I stopped. Because I remembered something. The vault fire wasn't accidental. It was ruled an electrical short. But the timing? 3 weeks before Arya died. My hands shook. She faked the fire,
Stole the piece.
then vanished. And now she's using it as a symbol. Not just that, I whispered. She's using it to say she's the origin. That she's the true heir to Lyrian. Not me. Not Julian. The press was already running headlines. Ashline triumphs with emotional resurrection show. Lyrian's lost daughter returns wearing founding prototype. Who really owns the legacy of fashion's most famous house? For the first time, my victory felt like a draw. Because Arya hadn't needed to out-tech me. She just reminded the world that she was first. Back at the hotel, I found an envelope slid under my door. Inside, a handwritten note. You walked the runway. I walked through fire. We'll see who they remember.
No signature.
No address. But there was something else. A second page. An old photograph. Me and Arya. Aged 10 and 15. Wearing bedsheets as gowns, standing on milk crates. On the back. You said you'd never leave me. Then you did. Now I'm leaving you last. I stared at it for hours. Not with rage. With grief. Because I realized then, Arya didn't just want to win. She wanted me to hurt.
To feel what she felt.
To mourn a family that pretended I mattered only after she disappeared. And somewhere, beneath all that fury, she was still my sister. The sister I loved. The sister I lost.
And now?
The sister I might have to destroy to save us all. The morning after both shows, House Lyrian was trending, for all the wrong reasons. Ashline claims founding dress. Was it stolen from the Lyrian vault? Sister versus sister. Who really built the empire? Julian Lyrian silent after Ashline partnership sparks legacy scandal. And worst of all, should Arya Lyrian inherit the brand she was cut from? The line between myth and reality had dissolved. And Arya was winning the emotional war. She wasn't just reclaiming her place. She was rewriting the family story. And the world was buying it. Henrik met me at a private hotel on the outskirts of Venice. He looked pale, like he hadn't slept. It's bad, he said, laying a folder on the table. The board's called an emergency vote for tomorrow. Vote on what? Control. I thought father still had majority shares. He does. But Julian and Celeste have gathered proxies. And now, thanks to Arya's PR miracle, half the board thinks she deserves a seat at the helm. She doesn't even legally exist in the company. That's what the vote will decide. I sat back, pulse hammering. It was happening. They were actually trying to give Arya my legacy. And yet, part of me couldn't help but understand. After all, wasn't she erased? Didn't she deserve something? But not like this. Not by blackmail.
Not by theft.
Not by flame. Then Henrik hesitated. There's something else, he said. What? Your father added a codicil to his will. Before the fire. Before Arya's disappearance. What kind of codicil? One that changes the line of succession entirely. He handed me the document. I read it once. Then again. And I couldn't breathe. It was short. 3 paragraphs. And in the middle, in the event that either of my daughters is proven competent and present at the time of succession, all leadership of House Lyrian shall defer to the firstborn female heir, regardless of prior exclusion. This clause supersedes all prior inheritance arrangements. I stared at the date. 3 weeks before the vault fire. Which meant, he knew Arya might return. And he changed the will to protect her. Or to protect both of us. Does the board know about this? I asked. Not yet. Only your father, his attorney, and now you. So Arya knows. Almost certainly. She orchestrated all of this to force the codicil into play. And if the board accepts it, she becomes CEO. And I asked quietly. You become nothing. Unless she appoints you. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just felt the numbness crawl into my spine. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about erasure, complete and permanent. The next day, the board convened in Paris. 17 members. 5 in person. 12 remote. The vote would be decided behind closed doors. But I wasn't waiting. I went to the rooftop of the Lyrian Tower and stood in the morning sun, thinking about the girl I used to be. The one who stitched dreams into velvet. The one who thought love and talent were enough. The one who believed in legacy. And then, Arya arrived, wearing black silk.
No jewelry. No makeup.
Just her. She walked up to me slowly. "It's poetic, isn't it?" she said. "That it ends where it all began. This isn't the end." "No," she agreed. "But it's the end of your reign." I turned to face her. "You faked your death. You burned a prototype. You recruited Julian to betray us both. I gave him purpose. You kept treating him like a child. Because he was one. We all were." We stood there, wind cutting through the silence. And then, softly, "You are my sister," I whispered. "You are my sister." She blinked, and for just a second I saw it. The girl I used to dance with in secret. The one who taught me how to thread a needle. The one who called me Little Light. But that version of her vanished just as quickly. "You had your chance," she said coldly. "And now it's mine." Then she turned and walked away. Into the tower. Into the vote. Henrik came running 15 minutes later. "It's happening. 2 members just flipped. The vote is down to 1 swing ballot." "Who?" He hesitated. "Your father." My heart dropped. "He holds the tie?" "Yes." "And he hasn't chosen?" "He's asking for a final meeting." 10 minutes later, I was in the old boardroom. Just me, my father, and the silent ghosts of every decision made before us. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. Tired, but clear. "I made mistakes," he said. "I listened to the wrong voices. I let your mother silence one daughter and overburden the other. You tried to fix it. Too late. Not if you choose right now." He sighed. "I never wanted a war between you. Then end it." "By giving it to you?" "By giving it to truth." He looked at me for a long time, then nodded, scribbled on the voting sheet, handed it to Henrik, and walked out without saying another word. I couldn't breathe. We waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then the board chair returned, holding a sealed envelope. He opened it slowly and read, "Effective immediately, House Lyrian will be led by a co-creative director model under the joint stewardship of Lumina and Arya Lyrian." I felt the world tilt. Henrik stared at me. He split it. He split it. 50-50. And just like that, my greatest fear became my new reality. Not defeat. Not erasure. But entanglement. Co-creative director. The words felt like rusted chains around my throat. From that moment on, every decision in House Lyrian had to be reviewed, approved, or vetoed by the very woman who once faked her death to escape it.
And now?
She sat across from me in our first joint strategy meeting, legs crossed, not a single note in front of her, confidence dripping off her like couture ink. "Shall we begin?" she said smoothly. "Let's." The meeting was civil. On the surface. She agreed with the budget projections, complimented my tech team, suggested a dual-themed fall line, ashes and embers. Half hers, half mine. 2 visions. 1 legacy, she said. Let's give them contrast and cohesion. The board applauded. Henrik looked cautiously optimistic. But I saw what Arya was doing. She wasn't collaborating. She was splitting the brand.
Softly.
Legally.
Permanently.
Half Lyrian. Half Ashline. And everyone was too enchanted to notice. 3 weeks into the co-directorship, it got worse. My designs were being delayed in fabrication. Models I hired were suddenly unavailable. Stylist notes were missing. Mood boards deleted. Seamstresses misinformed. All of it under the radar. All of it untraceable. But I knew. And then the bombshell dropped. 4 days before the joint fall collection reveal, a leak hit WWD. Ashes stolen? Lyrian's tech-laced gowns mimic Ashline innovation. Coincidence or copy? Attached were photos of my designs, ones infused with climate-reactive textile tech, next to Arya's original Ashline concepts from a year earlier. The implication? That I'd plagiarized my own sister's innovation. That I'd copied her. I locked myself in my office and stared at the article, veins buzzing with disbelief. This wasn't sabotage. It was warfare. And it was working. The story went global within hours. Julian gave a comment. Innovation thrives on collaboration. But credit is crucial. Even my mother chimed in. One daughter rises with grace. The other clings to shadows. I wanted to scream, but screaming would make me look guilty. Henrik barged in, eyes wild. They've filed an IP inquiry. Internal audit. You're being investigated. By our own house. Arya called for it. Publicly. She's crucifying me. She's dismantling you. That night, I did something reckless. I went to her. Alone. No guards. No advisors. Just me, in the atelier where she'd been working late. She didn't even flinch when I walked in. Come to confess? She said, not looking up. You leaked it. Prove it. You know I can't.
Because you used my own tech against me.
You waited. You watched. And then you mirrored it just enough to make me look like the thief. You're not the thief, she said softly. You're just the afterthought. Those 4 words broke something in me. You think you're the phoenix, I said coldly. But you're just ash in a prettier dress. She stood slowly. You want the empire? Burn it. You want the legacy? Choke on it. But don't pretend this was ever yours to keep. You don't get to punish me for your pain. I get to punish the people who let me die. There it was. The truth. She didn't just want to win. She wanted me to feel left behind. Because that's how she felt. I turned to leave. But before I reached the door, she called out. You can't fight me, Lumina. I'm not fighting you. I looked back. I'm ending you. The next morning, I made my move. Not through press. Not through sabotage. Through exposure. I called a private board session. Brought in a security consultant. Presented 3 months of internal logs, IP trails, time-stamped file edits, and most damning of all, a whistleblower. Raya. Yes, the same assistant who'd vanished. I found her. She'd been living under a new name. I offered her safety, full immunity, and more importantly, the chance to tell the truth.
She did.
On record, her confession was brutal. She detailed how Arya manipulated prototypes. How she'd ghostwrite Julian's communications. How she'd coordinated the show leaks, even coached the tech engineers on how to implant evidence of plagiarism into my files. Every stitch. Every step. Every lie. On record. In high definition. The board was silent. Julian tried to object, until Henrik handed over a second dossier. One with Julian's voice memos. Backing everything. He'd recorded calls between himself and Arya, planning the smear. His defense? I was trying to keep peace. The board didn't buy it. By the end of the day, 3 motions passed. Julian was stripped of all voting power. Celeste's financial holdings were frozen pending investigation. Arya was suspended indefinitely from all creative operations. And me? I was reinstated as sole creative director. No co-lead.
No caveats. No close.
Arya didn't attend the meeting. But she sent a single message. You're not the hero. You're just the last one standing. And ash always finds its way back into the lungs. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because for once, the truth spoke louder than blood. And I was done bleeding for people who only saw me as a threat. That night, I stood alone in the vault. The one she once faked burning down. I opened a drawer at the far end. Inside, a piece of her old sketchbook. A little note in the margin. For Lumina. My little light. Keep the fire warm. I closed the book. Not with rage, but with resolve. She would always be part of my past. But I was the one shaping the future. And House Lyrian was mine.
No astis. No ghosts.
Just creation. Threaded in truth. 6 months had passed since the fallout. House Lyrian had weathered the storm, but it wasn't unscathed. The brand had been gutted, its public trust cracked down the center. Some loyalists stayed. Others defected to boutique houses, or worse, Ashline knockoffs. The world had seen a family tear itself apart on a global stage. But the world had also seen something else.
Me.
Standing. Unbroken. The first thing I did as sole creative director? Burn the blueprint. Not literally, of course. But metaphorically, House Lyrian had clung too long to the ghosts of its past. To corseted nostalgia. To tradition weaponized as control. I wanted reinvention. Not just in fabric. In philosophy. I restructured the board. Brought in 4 outsiders, innovators in design, sustainability, wearable tech, even mental health advocacy. Yes, I wanted the best creatives. But I also wanted guardrails against old power. I reopened the scholarship my father once created in Aria's name. Yes, in her name. Because while I couldn't undo the wreckage, I could reframe the memory. I wasn't here to erase her. I was here to outlive her tactics. But reinvention doesn't mean peace. Peace came slowly. Mostly in fragments. One night, I found myself alone in the Lyrian archive, cataloging the pieces of our old house like an anthropologist. Velvet cloaks from the 60s. Diamond thread embroidery from the Prague show in '89. And in the far back, a damaged mannequin. Wearing the prototype. The prototype. The L20. The one Aria wore in her show. No one had touched it since. I stood there, breath caught in my chest. Because for all the destruction, all the manipulation, it was still beautiful. Still genius. And somewhere deep inside it, I could feel her. Then came the letter. Delivered by hand. No return address.
No signature.
Just 3 words, scrawled in ink on thick paper. I'm done fighting. No name. But I knew. And I didn't reply. Because I believed her. Not because she was sorry. But because she was tired. And maybe, just maybe, a part of her was healing too. Julian fled the country shortly after the board ousted him. No press statements.
No επαλεγή.
Just silence. Mother? She tried to sue. She lost. Then she tried to give an interview to Vanity Fair. They declined. I didn't gloat. Because in the end, they weren't villains in a fairy tale. They were just people. Broken people. Trying to control a legacy they never truly understood. But the legacy was mine now. And I knew exactly what I wanted to do next. The Eclipse Gala. My first solo show post-crisis. And I wasn't just showing fashion. I was showing forgiveness. Not as weakness, but as power. The theme, thread and bone. Every piece told a story of damage and repair. Frayed edges mended with gold foil embroidery. Stitches intentionally visible. Seams turned inside out. Pain integrated into the silhouette, not hidden. Because that's what survival looks like. Not flawlessness, but wholeness despite fracture. Backstage before the show, Henrik found me. He looked calm for the first time in months. You did it, he said quietly. You really did it. Not yet. You know she's here, right? What? Back row.
No cameras.
Just watching. I didn't have to ask who. I felt her. Like a temperature shift. The ember in the wind. I didn't acknowledge her during the show. Didn't wave. Didn't glare. I just let the collection speak. And when the final model walked out, her dress a patchwork of every Lyrian silhouette, stitched with thread dyed in real ashes from the old atelier fire, the room didn't clap.
It wept.
Afterward, the press raved. Lumina Lyrian restitches her family legacy and ours. Fashion's most emotional return since McQueen. From ashes, art. But that wasn't the real win. The real win came the next morning, when I received another letter. Shorter this time. Just a single sentence. It was always yours. I just didn't know how to share it. I folded the paper, tucked it into my sketchbook, and smiled. The gala had passed. The press moved on. But in the quiet days after the show, the empire began to hum again. Staff returned.
Designers sought mentorship.
Investors, once wary, now called daily. And House Lyrian was reborn. Not as a monument, but as a movement. I spent mornings walking through the atelier floor. Not to oversee, but to listen. One of the interns asked me once, why are the mannequins different heights now? Because perfection doesn't look the same on everyone, I said. We retired the old showroom's standard sizes. Introduced adjustable, modular dress forms. Fluid bodies. Fluid designs. It didn't just make headlines. It made history. Then came the call. Henrik knocked once and entered quietly. It's the lawyer. Which one? Your father's. His personal counsel. I met her that afternoon in the Paris office. She was old, sharp, impeccably dressed, like someone who knew the weight of secrets. She handed me a small envelope.
Worn.
Handwritten. The ink faded with time. He asked me to give you this. But only once the house was yours. Not before. Why? Because it's the confession. And a kind of permission. She left without further explanation. I opened the letter with trembling hands. Inside, 2 sheets. One with text. One with a sketch. The letter read, My little light, I never stopped loving you. Not for a second. But I failed you in ways I didn't fully see until it was too late. I tried to lead a house through silence, through compromise. I thought I was protecting you all by dividing my love. But love should not be divided. It should be honest. Arya was never meant to be erased. Neither were you meant to carry it all alone. When I saw what you were becoming, fierce, brilliant, luminous, I knew the house needed you. But I also knew Arya would return. She's the fire in the family. You, the light. And one cannot exist without the other. So, I drafted something. Not a will. Not a legacy plan. A design. I unfolded the second page. It was a sketch. His last design. A dress I'd never seen. Half light, half flame. The silhouette was dual-toned, one side structured, regal, woven with silver thread. The other? Chaotic, fluid, deep red, stitched with jagged embroidery like burns retextured into lace. And at the base, a note, to be made by both my daughters. When they're ready. I didn't cry. I wept. Because it wasn't just a design. It was his hope. His final attempt at reconciliation. A garment to stitch us together again. I kept the letter hidden for weeks. Until one morning, standing before the archive vault, I paused. And made a call I never thought I'd make again. She answered after one ring. Yes. There's a design you need to see, I said. A pause. Is this a trap? No, I said. It's a bridge. We met at the atelier 2 days later. No security. No press. No Henrik. Just us. I handed her the letter. Watched her read it. Watched the walls in her eyes begin to crack. He never showed me this, she said quietly. He was waiting until we were ready. She stared at the sketch. It's beautiful. It's impossible, I said. So was we. We stood in silence for a long time. Then she folded the page. We stitch it together? No press, I warned. No signatures, she said. No backstabbing. No crowns. We locked eyes. Then nodded. For 6 weeks, we stitched. Together.
Argued. Laughed.
Fought over fabrics. Shared old music. Remembered our father. Not as the CEO. But as the man who used to hum lullabies while hand-beating cloaks at midnight. The final garment? A masterpiece. Half structured light. Half raw flame. It had no name. Because names divide. This was simply ours. We never showed it. We never sold it. It sits in a glass case at the heart of the Lyrian archive, unlabeled, unworn. Not for display, but as a reminder that even ashes, when woven with light, can become something eternal. A year later, House Lyrian launched the First Stitch Foundation, an initiative funding experimental designers from war zones, displaced communities, and underserved schools. Arya became its silent co-sponsor. Her name never attached publicly. But I know. And she knows I know. And that's enough. Henrik now leads our global strategy division. He got married last fall. I designed the suit. He cried when he put it on. Julian? Still a ghost. Mother? Still bitter. But irrelevant. As for me, I'm no longer trying to be the brightest. Or the fiercest. I'm just true. To myself. To my designs. To the little girl who once draped bedsheets like ball gowns and dared to dream. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't destruction. It's creation. Louder, brighter, unapologetically yours. And I built an empire. Thread by thread. Revenge isn't just about payback. It's about reclaiming your voice, your truth. And when someone tries to rewrite your story, sometimes the best revenge is writing a better one. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and tell us in the comments, what's the most savage revenge you've ever seen someone pull off? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, because justice isn't always served in court. Sometimes it walks the runway.